Good afternoon to the EUdatathon 2019 webinar. Today we are going for Challenge 3, Tackling Climate Change, and we are really happy to have our partners today on board who will present you very interesting data sets. About the agenda today, so first I will give you a very brief introduction about the challenge as such, about the Datathon, and then we have the European Environment Agency, and after that DG Mare from the European Commission. So what is the Datathon about? It's a competition for EU citizens to compete in an open data challenge. So the only thing you need to do is use data from the EU, which is open. You can combine it with private data, you can combine it with whatever data you want, also with national data. And in this third challenge, it's about tackling climate change. So the webinar today will also be made available as the other webinars on our website, and here you can find more information, you can directly contact people, or you can see when the videos are starting. As soon as you have your presentation or your submission ready, please go on project registration and submit your proposal. You have still time until the 24th of March, so the clock is ticking. If you are interested in seeing what other teams in the previous years did, I would recommend you to also check our previous years, 2018 and 2017, to see the previous winners and what they submitted. So briefly about the rules for this webinar, please mute your microphones. And if you have any questions, please write them in the chat box so we can discuss them with the presenters. And now, with no further ado, I would give the floor to the EEA.
Well, thank you, Simon. I hope that you can hear us and see our screen.
Yes, both is working.
Very good.
Thanks a lot.
Maybe a short introduction to the agency before we go into the data. My name is Gretchen Curtins and I work in the communications department. I'm joined here with other colleagues from different departments. I'll give a short introduction to the agency before passing the microphone to my colleagues. European Environment Agency is an agency of the European Union, but actually we do cover a wider geographical area. We have 33 member countries and 6 collaborating countries. So our data and our knowledge is not just limited to the EU 28. So we do have Turkey, Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Switzerland as full members, but we do cooperate with Western Balkan countries as well. So this is something that I think participants could bear in mind, that it's actually a wider geographical area. Overall, it is environment agency, so we do look at many different topics, as you can also see on our website, that are related to the environment. So it does cover information on air pollution, climate change. It's a big component, so hence our participation in the Datathon. A lot of knowledge about biodiversity, land use, environment and health, agriculture, etc. So all this information is available on our website. The depth of the knowledge actually varies. Because we are an EU agency, we try to make this information as accessible as possible, meaning in simple terms and synthetic level. But there's a depth of information that is covered under the data and maps or indicators that I think participants could find and explore on our website. What we do with the data that we collect from these countries that I mentioned is quality check and quality assure the data. So there could be some anomalies in the data that is submitted. We correct those, we verify them, and then we publish them. And based on that data and other information, we produce assessments. For example, what is the state of air quality in Europe? What is the state of protected areas? Or the state of Europe seas, etc. and try to support EU policy making. That's one of the objectives of the agency, and provide information to the general public. So I think with that, that's I think a general information. We are happy to address any other questions, but I'll pass the microphone to my colleague Claire.
Thank you, Gulsen. My name is Claire Cole. I work in the Climate, Energy and Transport program. I work on climate change mitigation. And I will be presenting on the greenhouse gas inventory data set. This is the open data portal for the greenhouse gas inventory. You can download here the available data sets in a number of formats, and you also have here the manual which explains on how to use the data set. I'll explain a bit about the greenhouse gas inventory. The latest data set that is available on our website is that which has been submitted in 2018 by the member states to both the Commission and the EA, and also to the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. This process starts already on 15th January when member states submit draft inventories to the Commission and the EA, and as I explained, this data is quality checked. This quality check is an important process in the submission of the EU's inventory, because the EU is also in its own right a party to the UNFCCC, and we need to ensure that we are submitting quality checked data. The EEA is the inventory agency which prepares the inventory and submits this to the European Commission, which then submits the inventory on behalf of the EU to the UNFCCC. This is the EEA website where you can access the data viewer and the data set for your download, and you can read here further information about the scope of the inventory. If I go now to the data viewer, you are presented with a chart which, when you land on it, is showing total EU emissions for the whole time period since 1990. And this data viewer is surrounded by a number of filters. These filters describe all the information that is available to be seen. This data viewer is primarily intended to explore the data rather than for graphics, since the total data rows would be around 600,000. So this would be an easy way to explore all that data. If we take this filter down here, we see all the possible source categories for emissions which can be explored. These categories are according to the reporting methodology that is used by both member states and the EU. So these are agreed categories which all member states are reporting in the same manner. We can also filter by year. The reporting obligation starts from 1990, in this case up to 2016, because on this site at the moment we have data submitted in 2018. The 2019 data is currently being quality checked and will be available on the website as of May. Here we have a measure filter. The most common measure is, of course, emissions in absolute terms, but we can also view the emissions in a number of different ways. For example, percentage changes or shares of emissions. The geographic entity, so at the moment we can see EU28 reported to the convention. We can also go to EU reporting under the Kyoto Protocol, and there the geographical and emission scopes are a bit different. because under the Kyoto Protocol, this scope includes Iceland. And then here are the 28 member states and the EA countries, as Gülcan explained. And for the emission units, it's just a matter of changing the scale. Here at the top at the moment of the slicer, we have the possible greenhouse gases, all the greenhouse gases that are reported that fall under the climate change scope. So if we want to take a closer look at the trend in emissions and what is contributing to that, we can go to, for example, emission source and select further category. So we switch off national sources first and select the overarching category. So that would be energy and industrial processes and product use, also agriculture, land use change and forestry, and waste. So if we select that, and then the graph changes, and at first the visualization is not probably the most useful one, but we can change the filters around. So at the moment, we have here categories emission and year, so the emissions are sorted by category and year. If we flip that around, then the emissions are grouped by year. We take year to the series, then the emissions are grouped where there's no indication of the year and it's just a time series. And if we change that around and we take emission source to the series, then it becomes a more pleasing trend of the categories. If you go to grid here, then we have the actual data that's underlying that visualization, and you can also change this to suit your needs. So, for example, if you take the year back up, then that might be something that could be useful for you to make your own visualization. So we go back to the chart and we want to look at only energy. We can switch off all the filters here and just select energy. And for the trends, we need to bring the year back down again. So we can take a closer look at the gases that are contributing to energy. So instead of choosing all greenhouse gases, we take a look at the gases that are actually contributing, and that's methane, carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide. So when you first bring back, actually nothing changes because this is a sum of those gases. So we'll take this slicer here and we'll take it to series. And then we have a trend of those gases individually. And again, if you go to grid, you have the data that is underlying that visualization. If you want to download this data, you go to this icon here and you export it to Excel. So using the filters, you can choose whatever gas, for example, in this case, you are interested in, and then, for example, you want to compare how the development of this gas in energy has contributed in, say, a number of member states, and you can change the visualization, changing the filters as you wish. If we're interested in, for example, a hot topic, let's say we want to see how transport has been developing, then in the energy category, you can go down at this subcategory level and you see how CO2 developed for road transport in a number of member states. And what could be interesting, for example, if I want to know specifically for the case of Bulgaria, I can change the measure up here and I want to see how this has changed year on year. And then there's the development of how transport has increased and decreased rather than the trend. You can also switch to a number of predefined views here, which is also useful. For example, you want to see the change in emissions by sector, and the first view when you click on that is for the EU28 and in 2016. Using all these filters here, you can change that for a particular member state or a particular year. Another interesting predefined view is emissions per capita by country and gas, and then you can zoom into a particular country and see a time series for that. So there are endless possibilities with viewing 600,000 rows of data, and I hope you find it useful.
So thanks a lot. Can I already ask a question?
Yes.
So how often is the data updated?
The data is updated at the end of the reporting cycle, and that is after you submit to the UN FCCC as EU. So that is at the end of May.
Okay, so May every year then?
Yes.
Okay. There was a question in the chat box if the emissions over time can be compared in a way, because I could imagine it's quite difficult to compare data 20 years ago with now, where we have completely different methodology and maybe better sensors.
Do you mean across the time series for a
Yes.
particular member state?
For example, the time series, yes.
Yes. So you select all the countries here. Okay, and take the year down and choose which one is there. For example, Austria. Yeah. So there's a time series. In this case, it's emissions per capita. I can change that by selecting emissions here.
Mm-hmm.
Remove emissions per capita. So that's emissions at the moment. It's yeah, it's all gases separately, yes, because the gases are on this side. So that's the trend for Austria. The methodology itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Part of the quality checks is to try to ensure consistency across the time series. Of course, statistical data in 1990 is not what it is today, but that's part of the quality check to try to ensure consistency as far as possible, according to what is prescribed under international guidelines.
Super, thanks a lot.
All right, and I'll just take the microphone. My name is Suzanne Bell. I also work in the EDA in the same unit as Claire, working with climate change mitigation and energy. And today I'll be presenting the data set on projections. The two data sets that the EEA has submitted specifically for the Datathon are these two Claire has just presented, the inventory, and I'll take the projections. The links to the open data portal.
Yeah, could you speak a bit slower? It's difficult to understand, but yeah, thanks.
The links to the open data portal where these two data sets from the EEA can be found will continue to be on the webinar site. But in any case, they both link over to the open data portal. And this is the page on the open data portal where we find projections data. Where the data that Claire has just presented are the inventory data that look backwards to historical emissions. The projections data look at future expectations of greenhouse gas emissions by country in the member states of the EU. These data are reported every other year, most recently in 2017, and member states have the ability to update their projections in the intervening years. So some countries have updated their data in 2018. It means that the data set that we'll look at in a moment is the most recent version of the projections data and also the authoritative projections data for the EU. On this landing page on the Open Data Portal, we see three different versions, formats of the data file, and we also find a link over to the EEA's website where there's more information about the data set. If we look at that linked website, it provides a bit more information. Like the inventory data, the projections data are reported under the monitoring mechanism regulation, which describes how they're to be reported, among other things, that it's every 2 years, and that they have to report for the years 2020, 2025, 2030, and 2035. They report by gas or group of gases and by sector. We can see here that the data sets for the past 3 years are available. These top ones are the same. It's on the Open Data Portal. And also here, there's a bit more metadata about the data set. If we click this link, we would come to more information about how the data are collected, including the templates that member states use when they report the data. So it's possible to go back to the process by which data are reported. But for the purposes of this presentation, then I think it's most valuable to look at the data themselves. Unlike Claire's presentation, there is not a data viewer per se for the projections, but the data set is reasonably navigable. Unlike the inventory with 600,000 rows, I think here we have about 70,000. Those 70,000 rows are divided up between all of the EU member states. Those can all be seen here by country code, and the data set also includes an aggregate data set for the EU, which is the sum of all of the member states' submissions. So in this first column, it's possible to sort by member state, and then in this next column, we can see the year for which the projection is relevant. And so here we can see one time series from 2015 until 2035, and then it starts again here, 2015, and goes until 2035. As I mentioned, it's only requisite for member states to report every 5-year gap, so 2020, 2025, 2030, but it's also possible for them to report the intervening years. In cases where countries only report those 5-year intervals, then the EEA gap fills and interpolates the data linearly for what would be in the intervening years. Here we can say that see that these data were all, including the intervening years, submitted by Austria in 2017. The next two categories are the next two columns are the categories of emissions sources. These are the same categories as Claire just presented for the inventory, the ones that are used in reporting greenhouse gases in the EU. Unlike the inventories, the projections categories are grouped at a higher level, so it's not possible, for example, to go down into transport to subsectors. We have transport projections by year grouped here all together. The next two columns describe the gases and the scenarios for the projected data values. If we take the gases first, there are 3 different varieties of gases reported. One is the total greenhouse gases, one is the total ETS, and one is the total ESC. The ETS, the European Trading System, is one set of gases from one certain selection of sources, and the effort sharing decision is a counterpart to that, and together the ESC and the ETS emissions total the total greenhouse gas emissions. So this description of gases as total GHGs is broken down in column F into what we call WEM with existing measures, and then subsequently WOM with additional measures. And what that means is that for the total expected greenhouse gas emissions in any given year, the WEM with existing measures data would reflect the projections that would occur with the current set of policies and measures in that particular member state. With additional measures data, then we're going over to what the expected effect of additional policies and measures in that member state would mean for the emissions levels. In most cases, the WOM data would expect a lower level of greenhouse gas emissions. So for each of these categories of gas, there's a set of WEM data and a set of WOM data. These three final columns are the values of projected emissions. Column H is the actual reported value coming from the member state. The middle column I is a calibration or a gap filling if that is necessary. And then the final data, the final quality assured data here in column J are the values that can be used and are comparable across member countries. That's all the information that I think is relevant to share about projections at this time. I don't know if there are any questions.
So thanks a lot. All these abbreviations you mentioned, are they described somewhere? Because I could imagine it's quite difficult for outsiders.
Sure. The WEM and the WAM with existing measures and with additional measures, the GHGs, greenhouse gases, the ETS and the ESC, this is all described on through this link. It's possible to find more information, and it's also for parts of it available on this website that has the metadata describing the data set and the data collection.
Okay, super, thanks. For
I may
forecast,
also add, Simon, that there's actually additional information because, for example, what Suzanne and Claire have mentioned, we talked a little bit about the transport and the energy sector, for example. So there is more, I would say, a meta-level information that captures the main issues relevant to those things under our topic pages. So from our homepage, if they want to see how, for example, road transport affects emissions, etc., that information is also available to complement the data.
Mm-hmm. And for the forecasting, will they be checked over time how accurate they were, or how is it going in the future then?
Yes, occasionally, or I should say in recent years, there has been an assessment on how close to the emitted data the projections were. And this document is also available on our website to check the quality of the projection.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I think of this data set, I could imagine that participants could combine this data with potential policy changes or potential measures. Could they then check which measure could have which impact, or?
The current and expected policies and measures are another data set that is reported under the monitoring mechanism regulation to the European Environment Agency. And we have a data set on our website of all of these policies and measures. And so that database might also be interesting to explore. I believe that the expected emissions effects of individual policies is identified there, but the link over to this projections data set is not immediate.
Okay. Is there any way to contact you? I see there's contact us on your website if they have further questions.
Yes, definitely. There are different ways of contacting us, and through the link that you mentioned, they can we get back to everybody within certain days and stuff. So no problem.
Super, perfect. one more general question to give some vision or ideas to the participants. What would be open questions, what you would like to see answered with your data or with any other EEA data set? Are there certain points where you say, okay, this could be combined with something differently, or this question is really worth addressing?
I would say that we're very interested in looking at innovative visualizations of climate change trends, both historically and projected into the future. The topic under this challenge in the Datathon is really relevant and appropriate for the work that we're doing at the EEA, and we use quite a few visualizations on our website and in all of our reports and products, and we're looking forward to being inspired by the Datathon participants.
So thank you very, very much. I would like to add one more thing, and maybe I'll share my screen for this. I think those datasets could be really well combined with different datasets we already presented. So for example, we did a webinar with Eurostat where we also presented climate change datasets. So if you want to address this challenge, please also have a look here. And last week we did a webinar with the FAO, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, with the Joint Research Center, and from the European Commission, the Directorate-General Energy. So here you have really a wide range of data sets in this domain. You see that the EU is doing a lot here, and I think it could be really, really useful to combine different data sets here, and we are really interested to see what can be done with it. And now I would like to give the floor to Pascal. Pascal, can you share your screen?
Yeah. I share my screen. Okay. So, shall I start?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. So, I am Pascal Derek, working for the Imminent Secretariat. I am a technical coordinator, speaking to you here in Brussels at DG Mare. I'm going to present you Imminent, which is a project funded by the DG Mare. So, let's go. Imminent, it's all about open marine data. We've got 7 thematic portals. It's a huge amount of marine data collected in Europe. So you see here in this slide, you've got bathymetry data, geology, seabed habitats, physics, chemistry, biology, human activities. All these thematic as an individual portal, but you will be able to search the EU Open Data Catalog and retrieve some information on existing marine data. So you see what it is about. So we've got 7 spatial data infrastructures. This is for the technicians, but what you have to understand is that we maintain access, open access to marine data. Everything is INSPIRE compliant, so you will find the metadata of the data, you will find data products, and also data services. I've sent to EU Open Data documentation on accessing the data, because you have to know, you participants, that you've got 2 ways to go. You can download the data or access it remotely. So I will ask Simon to share this documentation with the participants so they understand how to work when they will compete. And now let's speak about this very challenging climate change challenge. So I've selected, let's say, 3 main imminent marine data. The first one is a new data, which is up to now not released, but it's coming. So for the EU Open Data Hackathon is going to be available. It's the coastal migration map. So we are speaking about here in this case of the effects of climate change. You will have access to a map for Europe about the effect, let's say, the effect of climate change. So you are able to have a look what's going on our coast in Europe and see what is the status. So please follow us on Twitter and you will know when it comes out. You have here an example of the existing map. The new one is based on big data and remote sensing. I think it's a different approach, so it's interesting to have a look. Next example, I take it from Imminent Physics. So you see we've got many physical parameters, and two of them are probably very relevant for climate change. One is the water temperature, and then the sea level trend. Let's have a look. So if you go in the portal, you will find information on the sea surface temperature with information which is collected through different programs. So the European Commission has two pillar programs. One is Imminent, the second one is Sea Data Cloud, and the third one, Copernicus. Three programs are complementary, and they offer access to a really huge amount of data. So for your challenge, I think you have to have a look to all this existing information. What we offer with Imminent Physics, so you will see that it's a 4D archive. You will have the 3 dimension, the surface and the depth, and also time dimension. All this data is available for download or from remote access. Proceed. Okay. Second example, sea level. So here you see some in situ measurements. Very often it's real time, and we maintain also an archive. If I select one station, you will be able to see that the data is directly available. So you are able to harvest it and compute it.
Because I got a new.
A third example is the Imminent Biology. So we speak about in these 3 cases about the impact of the climate change. So, for instance, in Imminent Biology, you will see that there's a clear behavior in the North Sea, where you see that the phytoplankton is migrating, or disappears. So it's interesting to see what are the reasons for these behaviors. Again, time series data is available. I take a last example. On next Monday, we will release a new dataset on vessel density map. Okay, you might say, well, it's maybe not so relevant for climate change, but we spoke about a lot of gas emission. And through this data, you are available to understand what is the maritime traffic, the real one for the year 2017. You can access this, you can search the dataset per vessel type, and you can extract the information. Now, I would like to wish you good luck on this hackathon opportunity for all participants. I think there's many things to do. You can have a look to the real impacts of climate change and try to do as we scientists we try to do is to evaluate the impacts, but you can also try to model what we can do in terms of changing our human activities. I was, for instance, thinking about what is the potential of wind farm energy in Europe. If you go through Imminent, you will find out with Imminent bathymetry datasets on bathymetry with 100-meter resolution, and you can also go through the Imminent Human Activities portal and find out where are the MPAs, so where is there space free to have new wind farms, for instance. So it's really just ideas I provide to you. And to conclude this presentation, we will have also an hackathon organized in September. So this hackathon is called OpenSea Lab. We will do it organized by Imminent in partnership with Marine Copernicus and ICES. So I've provided you a couple of documents, so I think it's going to be very useful for the participants. Also, all Imminent portals, we've got a help desk, so you might be able to contact us during the hackathon and ask us support to access the data or complementary information on all kind of data we offer. Again, it's open data, so good luck.
So thanks a lot, Pascal. Here are just a few questions. You said it's Inspire compliant. Maybe you could elaborate a bit more. What does it mean for outsiders?
Well, so we are in Europe. So we all speak different languages. So I'm starting with a very simple approach. So you have to understand, and this is what we do at Imminent. We collect disseminated data and we redistribute it, let's say, in a standardized way. To do this, we have to be Inspire compliant. The idea of Inspire is that when a train goes from Belgium to Germany, that's the same type of train. If you have a map, Belgium map and German map, they have there's not a political, well, there's a political border, but for maps, it's the same way. So Inspire helps to aggregate all this data in a standard way. So when you go through web services, it's a bit technical, then you will notice that you will find all metadata, you will find the information where is the data hosted for real, you will find a timestamp, and this timestamp is ISO standard, so everything is standardized so that you are not limited to access a data country by country, but you access it for the whole Europe in the same way. I was clear?
That was clear. Thanks. And you mentioned everything. All your data sets have also an API, right?
Not all, but many. For instance, Imminent Physics they have plenty APIs, and also for other portals like Imminent Biology, you will find our package. So this is very important for the participants to understand. They can access existing resources and build their own solution on top of their available APIs or R packages or any Python package. It's super important. I think we are all happy to see when we offer open source solutions that they are used.
Thanks. About licensing, can they just reuse your data open and freely? Do they need to mention you, the participants?
Again, back to Inspire, if you go through the metadata, you will understand how you can reuse the data. The philosophy of the Imminent is really open data, but in some cases, when you, for instance, if you go into the Imminent bathymetry, the aggregating map for Europe is for free. But if you want to have higher resolution, to do something specific, to process it in a more efficient way, you will find out that there is a survey run by a private company. And then you will discover through the metadata what you can do with the data. Maybe you will have to contact the private company to have access to the data.
Super, thanks. Just a question about the file size. I could imagine that they are quite huge if they want to process it on their personal machines.
Yes. Okay. So this is a very important question, because I will say we've got habits, like we used to download the data, but now, thanks to the technology, thanks to the cloud, thanks to the remote services, web services, APIs, the best way to go is to access the data remotely through WFS services or WGS services. We provide some great examples with Imminent. So just ask if you need support accessing the data, but if you take the example of the bathymetry, it's almost 1 terabyte. You are not going to download it. You have to access it remotely. And the WC service, web coverage service, is there to serve this data in an elegant way.
Great, thanks. You mentioned that you offer 4D data, so the 3D plus time. I could imagine that it's quite difficult to work with 4D data. Is there some way to learn about it, or to how would you educate it?
Actually, it's not so difficult. For the technicians, you will discover that the web services, they support the 4 dimension. You have a parameter for the time and a parameter for the depth. If you go into the Imminent chemistry portal, you will see that from the map you are able to select the time dimension and the depth dimension, and what you see is a 2D representation of the sea surface. So this is not really a problem, but for the participants who don't have this experience, they have to learn a bit how to use this. But again, web services, documentation is there. We've got also APIs. So yeah, I don't think it's too difficult.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Pascal. That was super helpful, and I think the datasets are really, really interesting. So I hope people pick them up and do some proposals for it. To end the webinar, I would first like to thank all of our partners for their help for the presentation today and for all the support they do in promoting the event. And then I would like to highlight, if you have any questions about the competition, about certain rules, or if you want to contact certain partners, please write us an email, contact us on Twitter so we can help you. We really want to support you. And also, if you're interested, join then also the other hackathon from the EMODNet. I think that sounds also super interesting. And with this, I would like to thank everyone and close the webinar. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you.